Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me. I am Dr. Donna Kelleher. I am a holistic veterinarian in the Pacific Northwest with over 27 years of experience. And in this interview, I'm interviewing Dr. Judy Morgan. And it's just amazing to me how we have come to such similar conclusions independently of each other. I've never met her before, but in this interview, we go over so many things. We go over nutrition, all kinds of ways that she got into holistic veterinary medicine, how she thinks of nutritionists in general, and some really great miracle cures that she has seen, and what brought her into holistic medicine. So it's just kind of all about her story, and a lot of good messages too for young veterinarians getting into the profession, people who are animal caregivers. How do we stay strong in that world? And those are just great messages. We can't hear enough of them. And so, without further ado, let's meet Dr. Morgan. Okay, everybody, this is a super exciting day because we have the very famous and wonderful and well accomplished Dr. Judy Morgan, and she's going to share with us all kinds of amazing facts that she's figured out over the years, little tidbits. And I know that, she definitely doesn't need me. You definitely don't need me to help share your message, but I love to interview people. It's like I like just kind of getting into how on earth did all of this occur for you? I mean, assuming, you just went through vet school like the rest of us. What happened early on maybe to bring you into this direction? And yeah, can you share it with people that kind of?
It's a series of accidents.
Okay, yes.
It's a series of accidents and coincidences. So I went to University of Illinois, Midwest, very traditional, early 80s. So yeah, we didn't talk about anything other than traditional stuff, prescription diets, and I was in practice for about 10 years. And oh man, it's a long history. I'll give you the short version. But I lost my job for being pregnant. So that's the first thing in 1989. So yeah, women are treated differently now, thank goodness. But yeah, I lost my job because I was pregnant and couldn't go to work. Shocking. So I ended up doing relief work for a while, and then ended up actually buying into a practice with one of the people that I was doing relief work for. And the practice, when we bought it, it was owned by a veterinarian who was a homeopath. We didn't know anything about homeopathy. We just thought that he was practicing voodoo down there in that building. And then when he retired, we took it over. And a few years later, my business partner, he did a lot of surgery, a lot of orthopedic surgery, and I didn't. So this thing came across my desk, and it was called Veterinary Orthopedic Manipulation. And it talked about how we could heal our animals, our patients faster after surgery. We could, prevent them from tearing their second ACL after they blew out the first one, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, this might be and I'm thinking it's like some sort of rehab or something. So I thought, well, this will be great because this will be my contribution to those orthopedic cases. So I went and took the course, and within an hour or two, first of all, I was late getting there. I got lost. And then within an hour or two, I was like, I think this guy's talking about chiropractic. I don't even know if I believe in chiropractic.
And who was that? Like, who?
Dr. Inman. Dr. Inman. Okay. He's from out west.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't think that I was going to get anything out of it. I didn't think he had anything to offer. I didn't think I believed in it, but we had paid for it. So I stuck around, finished the course, and the first patient that I saw back in my office was a 95-pound dog that was carried in, couldn't walk. And so I got out my activator and adjusted the dog, barely knew what I was doing. And 2 minutes later, the dog jumped up and ran down the hallway. And I kind of went, well, that was a miracle. I have no idea what just occurred, but that was pretty cool. So I started using the chiropractic on everything that walked in the door pretty much. It was life-changing for me. And then I was very sad about all the animals that had been put down with their intervertebral disc disease and, their hind end issues and motor problems, because I didn't have that tool available to me earlier in my career. But it started me on the whole path of what else is out there. And so the first thing I started studying was homeopathy. It did not resonate with me. I believe in it. I like it. It just was not my gig. I couldn't make myself do it. So I got into TCVM and got started on acupuncture, food therapy, Twina, herbs, and that
like
totally.
Dr. Shea. Were you?
Yeah, at the Chi Institute. Yeah, and that totally resonated with me. But in my journey, then I started getting more holistic clients coming to me, looking for things that were a little out of the ordinary because they heard, and my business partner actually sold out his half of the practice to me. He said, "You're back. It's something about the building. You're doing voodoo again, and it's black magic, and I don't understand it, and I'm not a part of that." So he kept the bigger hospital. I got the smaller hospital. So it was kind of fun. But, I started looking at all kinds of things that clients were bringing me: raindrop therapy, color therapy, essential oils, like you name it, it all comes out of the woodwork, and you start getting exposed to all these different things. And, I just realized there were so many more tools we could put in our toolbox that it's just a whole new world. So
how were you open-minded to go into it in the first place? Did you have a grandmother that was nothing like that? It's just the experience that you personally had. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. My mom's was a school teacher. My dad was a salesman. Okay. Nothing.
Yeah. I know. I didn't come from a medical family. I always say, that, I don't know. It changed. It definitely changes the way you look at things, but well, then how did you get into, because what you really are focusing now in your book, the yin and yang of food therapy, is that, did I get the name right there? I want to make sure everyone
Yin and yang nutrition for dogs.
Okay. And then you have your website, and really a lot of it now is around nutrition. I mean, I just saw a video of you doing like food prep for your dog in this beautiful kitchen. And I was just wondering, how did you transfer to that, and how did that sort of come to pass? And then did you see any early successes from doing the food therapy that made you kind of go in that direction a little bit, or?
Yeah. So when interestingly, the second practice I worked in out of school for the one that fired me for being pregnant, we sold more Hill's prescription science diet than just about any practice in the country. Literally every patient was on one of the alphabet soup diets. So the puppies were on the PD, and the old dogs were on the GD, and then any illness in between, we were using the diets. And my boss at the time actually got tons of free trips all over the world from Hills because we sold so much of it. And so that was how I practiced for 5 years. And when I was in the very first part of the acupuncture course at the Chi Institute, they were talking about prescription diets, and we were talking about renal disease. And so they said, yeah, KD, the killer diet. And I went, what?
Wow, I've never heard that.
So, the eyeballs kind of opened up. And so then I took the food therapy course and absolutely loved it. But I actually started using food therapy even before I took the course, because once I really started looking at what was in pet food, and then I became friends with Susan Thixton at Truth About Pet Food, she invited me to start going to AFCO meetings, talk about eye-opening. So going to AFCO meetings and realizing how horrible the pet food industry is. And, I had bought into it for so many years. Of course, you get a lot of guilt about that. Like, oh my gosh. And I saw it. I had Dobermans at the time. We had bigger dogs. And I struggled with diets for my dogs. The gas that they would pass would knock you out of the room. And I never understood why these dogs struggled so much. Of course, they're Dobermans, so they've got heart disease, bloat, bad skin, hypothyroid, von Willebrand's,
I love Dobies.
I do too, but pick a disease. Now I have Cavaliers, pick a disease. So So I started actually designing diets for my patients long before I even took the food therapy course, and long before I started. And what the books came about, I actually have three cookbooks out, but the Yin and Yang Nutrition is the best one. So that's the one we talk about. My first book was the From Needles to Natural. Um, but I actually wrote the Yin and Yang book because I would spend so much time in my consultations writing out diets and designing new diets for every case that came in the door. It became so much easier after the book was published. I could walk into the exam room with the book in my hand, and 9 times out of 10, that client had already bought the book before their consultation and gone through it. And so then it was really easy to just stick Post-it notes on the diets I wanted them to use. It saves so much time.
That's awesome. That's, yeah, I know. I do that now with my podcast. It's like, yes, you can learn about anal glands. Here, I'm going to send it to you because I feel like my
Exactly.
voice can only do so much. But so I have a question. I was I just, and this wasn't on the list, sorry, but we participated in the VMX conference. That's just this big conference, veterinary, giant conference in Florida, just over on virtual. And everybody, it was so interesting to listen to the speakers. Of course, they're all conventional, but they're recognizing the fact that dogs can't eat a lot of these dog foods anymore, like the prescription diets they want them to eat, not unless they're on like Apoquel or something to help with all their allergies. And so what their answer was, it always pretty much was, you have to contact, as a, they're teaching other vets, they're saying you have to contact a boarded nutritionist, um, and sort of like promoting that whole scene, which is like the balance it kind of, I think,
Yeah.
Davis scene. And I've had a lot of problems with that from the get-go, but I kind of wanted to get your take on, like, that was their answer. Oh, you can't do it yourself. You have to,
Right.
contact these nutritionists and they will design a diet for your dog's, heart disease or kidney disease or allergies or whatever. And of course, I've gotten clients through that way because they come in and they said to do this diet, and it's like, 3 cups of oats, and I'm sitting there and I do muscle testing and allergy work, and I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely allergic to oats. So there's a lot of grains in those diets. I'm just wondering what your take on the whole nutritionist thing is, and if you have any thoughts about all that.
I really dislike it. And like you, I get a lot of clients who come to me because they've gone that route, and then they come in and they go, okay, they gave me one recipe
Mhm.
and I have to make the same exact thing. I am not allowed to, I'm told, don't vary it at all. These are the exact snacks your dog can have, how often, how many. And basically, on their website, you pick one protein, one carb, and one vegetable. And, like a non starchy.
Mhm.
That is so boring. And people are like, why am I giving my dog a bowl full of macaroni or a bowl full of potatoes? Oh, and then I'm adding a synthetic vitamin mineral mix to it, which can set off another whole legion of problems. So a lot of times people are coming and saying, well, I want to have some variety in my pet's diet. I don't want to use a synthetic supplement. Can't we do this using whole foods? Sure, we can. It's going to be more than 3 ingredients. So I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of synthetic supplements. I'm not a fan of filling our pets' bowls with all kinds of starchy carbs. I think that creates more inflammation. I think it leads to a lot more problems down the road. And so, of course, board certified nutritionists absolutely despise people like me who are out here designing diets and balancing them
Well, and
without
you're telling people
using
that
them.
they can do it. You're telling people
Yes,
they can do it. And it's like, oh no, that
exactly.
you can't do that, because it's just like the pharmaceutical industry, if you can't own it, they want to own it. They want to own nutrition. And it's like, you can't own nutrition. You can't own
Right,
broccoli or, you know,
right.
organ meats. I mean, so they want that, and that power, and they're, getting it over the industry. But it's lovely to see, it's very refreshing to see someone who has the same opinion as me about that. It's just what I've seen. It's just practical. It's like,
Yeah.
the allergies. I mean, the allergies have really driven a lot of people to homemade and raw diets. I think, just out of
Yeah.
sheer necessity. You know, they've seen
Yeah.
less ear infections, less skin itching, like you
Yeah.
said.
Allergies, IBD, it's become just a nightmare, really.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
like an
has,
epidemic.
yeah, it has to do with toxins in the food. Aflatoxins, the mold toxins are just ridiculous. Something like 65% of the corn crop is affected by aflatoxin. Well, guess where the moldy corn goes? It doesn't go on our table. And those aflatoxins are not destroyed in the cooking process. They're actually made worse. So it's a huge, there are so many problems with the pet food industry.
Yeah, but it's so good to just shine a light on a few of them.
Yeah.
So you kind of specialize in the treatment or the food treatment using a nutritional treatment for kidney disease and other diseases. And I was just wondering, would you mind just letting people know a little bit more about that, or even how to reference that onto your website? Of course, everybody knows you have this amazing website, judymorgan.com. And if you want to give more information about your, kind of what your belief is as far as organ issues when a dog actually has, that they're diagnosed all the time with like stage 1 or stage 2 or even more kidney failure. And I see that all the time now. It's actually, we rarely got kidney disease 20 years ago in dogs. It was always cats, and now I feel like it's dogs, and there's a lot of more Cushing's. And yeah, but anyway, just what do you think about just kind of honing in on those organ issues? Do you limit protein, and when do you decide to limit protein?
Interesting that that that's where you're going, because we actually just did a video in my kitchen Monday
Okay.
with making kidney diets, because it's such a huge problem that we're seeing as well. And those diets can be used for other things, like they can be used for Cushing's disease and diabetes and a lot of other inflammatory problems that we have with our pets. I take a definitely different approach than the traditional veterinarians do. And I actually just wrote a whole kidney module because we're doing a hospice course. And stage 1, stage 2, I would not limit protein at all. Most people don't even know that their dog or cat has stage 1 or stage 2. They're usually not even symptomatic. So basically what we're doing is we're treating numbers on paper. We're not treating the actual pet. And I've seen so many animals that are protein starved because their diets are restricted way too early. I find the same problem with animals who have pancreatitis. The veterinarians instantly go to absolutely no fat in their diet. And so we get these animals who now have dry, brittle nails, dry, brittle coat, their heart's not functioning well. They don't have enough fats in their diet to actually be healthy. And there's so many other things that go into pancreatitis besides fats. And by the way, if we feed raw fats, they don't get pancreatitis. You can feed a 70% fat diet, like the keto diets,
Yeah, that's what I was.
to a dog and never get pancreatitis, because they're raw fats. They're not oxidized, and they're not a problem for them.
And what?
So
Just can I stop you there for a second?
yeah.
What do you call raw fats? What does that mean to you? Or how, like, is that avocado
Well, so
oil?
if we're raw feeding, so if like ground beef that's raw, like for the keto diets, they're using the 70% lean beef, which
Okay.
is factory farmed. So that's not the best, but that's how you get to that level. But I'll use coconut oil, I'll use butter, I'll use ghee, oils, all kinds of things we add for the fats if we need them. And I think that omega-3s are critically important for these animals with inflammatory diseases like the kidney disease, the heart disease, any kind of neurologic disease. And I think we're depriving our animals from a lot of care by taking these diets and really pulling them back way too far and way too early in disease. With our hospice dogs, and actually with my own dogs even, we've had dogs that are, their creatinines are 7 and their BUNs are 200, and we're still feeding them raw meat diets, and they're just fine. They're not dead in 2 days. They're around for 2 years. They're doing fine. Their numbers on paper are horrible. Who cares?
Yeah, I know. It's I get what you're saying, and I think that too. Do you use specific vegetables to treat organ issues? Because I've kind of done that in my practice, like for the kidneys, I'm looking at asparagus. I try to get them to do asparagus, fennel bulb, parsley. And for the liver, I'm kind of looking at like dandelion greens and beet greens and stuff. I don't know if that's part of how you feel
Yeah,
or
absolutely. Because for the liver, usually we've got liver qi stagnation, so we're using things that are going to help move that stagnation, do some draining. So that's where those. We also generally need blood tonics for the liver, so we're using those dark leafy greens, and we're using those things that help get things moving. For the kidneys, we want things that are going to make the urine flow. We want that water going in, going out, flushing as much as possible. So yeah, absolutely. I have certain things that I like for certain problems, usually based on their TCVM diagnosis, but you don't really even have to have a TCVM diagnosis. It's like, look, his liver enzymes are really elevated. How are we going to bring them down? Let's give him some of these things to support and drain the liver.
I love that. It's so practical. I love practical. Yeah, that's good. So how do people access your kidney to get more information about the kidney diets that you referenced to?
So my website is drjudymorgan.com, drjudymorgan.com. I also have a Facebook page, Judy Morgan DVM. I have a YouTube, but all that you can get to through the website. The books are available on Amazon and also on the website. And then we also have something called Dr. Judy U. You can go directly to that, or you can get to it through the website. But it's an educational channel where we have a lot of courses that we have made, and then that we're continuing to put things on. We've also done a lot of summits where we interview company owners or other holistic veterinarians, all kinds of different information. And so our summits, after we do them, they get posted in there as well. Basically, we have shifted a lot. We started out sort of as an adjunct to my veterinary clinics, where because I had a lot of clients who were driving hours to get there, so they couldn't pop in to pick up supplements or whatever. So we started out sort of as an adjunct to that for people to be able to order their products online. And so the e-commerce store has grown immensely. We have over 350 products in there now. It's a little crazy. But then in the past, since COVID, really, because I used to go out and speak about 40 weekends a year, we would be on the road. And which was fun while I was running 2 clinics. But with COVID, we had to stop and not be out on the road. And so we basically pivoted everything online. And so now we do just a ton of webinars and a lot of content. And we have really become a lot more of an educational platform. And that's really our focus for the next few years, is to be an educational platform. Especially, and I just read another article today about the veterinary shortage, and it's huge. And I think that it is up to pet parents to educate themselves and understand and be able to navigate a lot of what's going on without the help of their veterinarian, because they're just not available. And it's very scary to me that when I have some of my clients from my old clinics who are texting me at 1 o'clock in the morning going, I've called 8 emergency services. No one will see me. My dog is hemorrhaging out both ends. What do I do? And I think that is a bad, bad place for people to be. So
I would love to talk about that for a second. I'm glad you brought it up, because of course my last book I wrote because of this problem. I had a friend that tried to commit suicide, and there's just a lot of problems in our profession. So I wrote Zen and the Art of Caring for Pets because of that experience. And that is something that I think we need to address as sort of as a profession. And I mean, I feel like we're not, I mean, there are people who are working on this, like the Not One More Vet website or and Facebook page is just like amazing. And they're trying to do a movie about veterinary suicide and burnout and stuff. And I think that's great. I gave to that donation. I gave to that movie. I hope it comes out. But I just wondered, I asked my other people, my other experienced veterinarians this too, and got all kinds of different answers. What do you think are some of the solutions to try to, we have an attrition rate in veterinary medicine, even if someone doesn't commit suicide, of only 7 years. And I'm wondering, in your experience, like, do you have advice for young people who are thinking about being vets, who are vets, who are struggling? And, you know, I just kind of want to get your take on that. What do you think? What do you think some of the solutions could be? And where could they start?
I think it's hard. I'm sorry, my dogs, I've got one snoring, one barking.
You done it. Perfect. It's so great. It's an authentic experience with the veterinarian.
It is authentic. They're just, whatever. Anyway, it is hard because my generation, I graduated in '84, so been at this for 38 years.
Yeah, that's 10 years. You graduated 10 years earlier than me.
Yeah. So, and I was definitely burned out. The reason I sold my practice is I was burned out. I could not do it anymore. And when you find that you aren't as caring about what's coming in the door, it's like, it's time to not do this because I'm not giving it 110% like I have done for 35 years. So, there is a huge difference in the baby boomer veterinarians from my generation versus what is coming out of school now. And that is part of our problem. When I went to school, probably 25% of my class walked out the day of graduation and opened their own clinic. No one considers doing that now. No one is brave enough. And the veterinarians that are graduating, all they care about is mentorship. They want somebody to hold them by the hand and basically teach them everything that they supposedly just spent 8 years learning. It's very difficult. And the salaries that they need because of their student loans being so high, we're paying huge salaries. And I experienced this over, especially the last 10 to 15 years of practice. Every time I trained a lot of new grads. But it was a frustration because I felt like I was working twice as hard trying to get somebody up to speed. And then if they only stay around for 1 or 2 years and then go back to wherever home was, it's a lot of work. The small clinics that are privately owned cannot afford to get these veterinarians because corporate is giving them huge sign-on bonuses, helping pay their loans. And the baby boomer generation, and this is going to sound very negative toward people now because they probably have a better handle on life than we did. We worked 80 hours a week without batting an eye. It's just what we did. There was no such thing as we're done at 5 o'clock. It was we're done when we've finished the last emergency surgery, or we're done when the last disaster has been handled for the day. And so there were a lot of times I would get home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. My kids grew up in the clinic. And that's not what we see now. Part of our veterinary shortage is that the graduates now actually want to have a life. And so, like I said, maybe they're actually on to something that we might have gotten a little bit of benefit from. But it literally takes 2 veterinarians now to do the job of the old timers who were basically working double shifts. So when I hired a new grad and I had her working 3 days a week. It ended up being about 30 hours because they were, 9 to 6 or whatever. And I gave her an extra half day and she went nuts. Can't work more than 3 days a week. Can't do it. She laid me low, new grad. And I said, you're out of your mind. So I think there's a huge shift in how much time people are willing to put into it. So, if we look at, salary equivalents, maybe we were getting paid a salary for doing 80 hours a week what we're now paying for somebody to do 30 to 35 hours a week. And I would hope that by people working less hours, they'll get less burned out and maybe they will stick in the profession a little longer. But it's very different than it used to be.
Yeah, it's almost like a completely different world from when I
It
graduated.
is, and they're not trained in surgery. They have zero confidence in surgery. They don't want to do surgery. So when I was a young vet, we did not have emergency services. We did not have specialty services. It was us. We did not have emergency services to cover for us. We were on call all the time. And again, I'm not saying that, we're better or whatever. I'm just saying it was a totally different work environment. There wasn't someone, if an animal had a ruptured tumor in its kidney, we couldn't call somebody else. It was, well, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to figure out how to take a kidney out. Oh, that cat needs a PU. I'm going to figure out how to do a PU right here now. And somebody, could you please hold the book up with the pictures and, let me get this done.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, we're so, I wonder if the women, like I'm thinking women, just only because like at your time when you went to school, there weren't as many women. And
there weren't. My class was probably 30% women.
Wow. That's amazing. Because now they're 70, maybe even more.
Maybe 90.
I was going to say.
It's mostly women.
Maybe it was like kind of, you knew that you had to be tough. I mean, because, and strong and tough. I mean, it wasn't like just, oh, I think I'm just going to be a vet. It was like, I'm going to, it's like you're kind of in there with the men, I'm going to do this. Like, it was very different. Even when I graduated, it was kind of more in the 50-50 range. Still, most of the women in my class were pretty tough. Like, I wouldn't want to meet them in a dark alley. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of it is just now maybe people, I don't know, are a little bit just, yeah, like you say, they're not as willing to work or not as willing to put in the hours.
I think it's more of a job than a career, maybe. Maybe that's part of it. Because for me, there was nothing else I ever wanted to do or be, and there was nothing else I could have been or done. Like it was, this is the path, this is the only path. So I would have stuck with it as long as it took. Luckily, I got in the first year, but I would have stuck with it as long as it took to do it because there was nothing else that I could even imagine doing. And actually, my senior year of vet school, I had been dating a classmate for the whole 4 years. And somewhere about March of senior year, he's blurted out something about we would own a clinic together, but I would stay home and have kids and take care of the house, and he would run the clinic. And I was like, we're done right now. If you think, because I paid my own way through school, and I said, if you think that I just put in 8 years of the hardest years of my life.
Wow. What planet was he on? What planet was he on? Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's almost like they didn't, he must not have acknowledged all the work that you did. Jeez. Well, you're still at it. You're still doing all this stuff. It's amazing. I kind of want to know also just where you get your energy. Like, I mean, do you see a practitioner? And like, when I interviewed Rob Silver, he said, okay, I have this herbalist. She makes me this really cool elixir, and every morning I have it. I'm like, wow, because he does a lot too. He's working for Real Mushrooms now. But where do you get your energy? How do you do it? You're putting in like more than 12-hour days, aren't you?
Depends on the day. A lot of days.
I mean,
yeah.
I see all that you're doing. I've written 3 books, and it was hard, it's like, so, and you're doing that times 50. I mean, my God.
It was harder when I had my 2 clinics. But now that I don't, and I thought, oh, good, I'm retired. My daughter is the COO of Naturally Healthy Pets, and she's extremely hardworking. And so I feel, and she has a toddler. She has a 1.5-year-old child. So I'm like, okay, if she can manage to get this done, then what the heck am I slacking for? Like, she needs me to make content and, do stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to do it because I feel really bad, like watching her, she gets the kid to bed and then she's like working all night getting stuff done. So I guess now she's setting the example, so I have to
Well,
follow.
she had a good teacher, good role model to do that. That's amazing. Well, what do you think the future is? I mean, should we all be, what should we as holistic vets, the ones that are left? I mean, we have so few holistic vets. That's the other thing. I refer out, I do have my practices and I refer out, I'm gonna say like 5 to 10 people a day that I have to tell them I can't see them. It breaks my heart with every email. I'm just wondering, what I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can kind of, I always feel like I'm in this reaction mode. Like, okay, something happens and then I do something. Like, my friend tries to commit suicide and I write a book. My, you know, I'm wondering how we can, as a profession, as a group of people, move forward. I mean, and is that the role of like the AHVMA to get new vets to be kind of like, to almost like make it so we could all be mentors for a wide net of vets? I mean, how do you see that? Could that take place? I know there's a lot of people who kind of, I think, would have interest in that.
It would be nice if we could. I mean,
Would
and
mean that we
that's
all have to get along. It's like
well, and I don't, and that is really interesting that you would say that as well, because my very first boss wasn't the greatest boss, and it was a horrible, low, low, low tech clinic. Like they didn't even have IV catheters when I went. We were 1984, but it was just so low tech. Um, but the best thing that he did for me, first of all, he was great. If he took a day off, then I would get a day off. It was like, no, we have to keep it even. So he was really good. But every Tuesday, we went out to lunch with the staff from another vet clinic in the area. And so he introduced me to everyone, and everyone got along. And there was no such thing as these are my clients, those are your clients. It was people could go wherever they wanted. And I've always said, look, somebody can open up a practice next door to me. If I'm doing a good job taking care of my clients, they're coming in my building. And if I'm not doing a good job, they're going to go to that building. So, I don't understand competition. So I think that's one thing that, everybody kind of has to get over themselves and say, look, people are going to listen to whatever resonates with them, and they're going to be drawn toward the person, the veterinarian, doctor, whatever that resonates for them and their pet and what they're, trying to accomplish. So, I think that we can get past the competitive thing for getting more. Part of the problem, like Florida, where Dr. Shea is teaching, they actually have a whole track on TCVM that the students can take, which is amazing.
Is that at Gainesville?
Yeah,
At the
and I
vet
wish
Yeah.
at the vet school. So I wish we could get more schools to look at things a little differently, but I think part of it is funding by pharmaceutical companies, funding by pet food companies. Pet food companies do not want students to learn how to make diets. They don't want students to talk about feeding something other than what comes out of a bag, box, or can. So, if we can't get away from that, and if we've got problems in our educational system from kindergarten on up, but if we can't get away from the narrative of there's this one way to do it only,
Yeah. I love that. That's
it
exactly
gets very difficult. It gets very
Right.
difficult because we're kind of climbing that cliff, trying to bring them like, come here, like take a leap of faith. And it's hard. And I think if they work in a practice where they see it, but every single holistic veterinarian I have talked to, impossible to get somebody to come and work. I mean,
No,
it's impossible in a traditional clinic right now too, unless you're corporate, but it's really hard to get people. And I would say, as a group, holistic veterinarians really suck at business, really
yeah.
bad. So they can't afford to pay to get good staff. So that it's great. I'd love to have a veterinarian come in and learn how to do all these cool things that I do. Yeah, they might like to learn it too, but I can only pay them 3/4 what somebody else is going to pay them in a big clinic.
And do
So
you think
until we
that
learn how to be good business people, we can't we can't pay them what they need to be.
Do you think that boils down to as simple as like what we charge? I mean, is it as simple as what we charge? I mean, we do not charge enough. Is that
That's part of it. We're not
okay?
good at scheduling our time. We're not good at charging effectively. We're not good at getting people back in the door for their follow-ups and really doing the follow-through. We're not good at, like, I had rules in my clinic. Any animal that was on chronic medication, they were getting lab work every 3 months, not once a year, not never, every 3 months. And it wasn't, a little abbreviated, I want to know what his BUN is. It's, you're getting a full panel, you're getting your analysis, I want to know what's going on. And it took a long time to train my clients to understand that, especially new people who would come in and it's like, oh yeah, my dog's been on seizure meds for 4 years. Great. When's the last time you had lab work? Lab work? Why would I do lab work?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it's really about practicing better medicine, for one thing. Because when you start doing things that way and you're really focused on catching things early and being more proactive instead of reactive, it makes a huge difference. I mean, my clinics were very successful. I had to hire, I bought out my partner in 2007, wow. Almost went bankrupt in 2008.
Because of the recession?
No, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Oh my God.
I was not a good business person. I had no clue. So I hired consultants, paid them, the last dime that I had, actually, I put it all on a credit card. It was $35,000. And I thought, I'm going bankrupt and I'm giving you $35,000. I need my head examined. Best thing I ever did. I learned how to run a business and I learned how to practice better medicine because the consultants were, teaching me how to do that as well. And it made a huge difference, but most of us don't realize that we're in such a bad position until, it's like, oh, I'm about to fall off the cliff. I see it in the older group of veterinarians who are still in their 70s and 80s and still practicing, not necessarily because they want to, but because they can't afford not to, because they can't sell their clinics to anyone. They don't know how to get out. They haven't made enough money to have any savings. We don't have a retirement account because we're self-employed. So I think that in order to attract new people to do what we do, we have to also show them that business-wise, it can work for them.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And so do you teach, is that something that you do? Do you teach vets at like the AHVMA or, cause I just love that you're doing, that that this is important. Cause I have a business and I think it's successful, but obviously not as big as what you do, but I'm not in debt and things like that. But I think that to bring it up to the higher level, we need a, like, almost someone to sit down and go, this is the plan, this is how it could look. And do you do any classes with like the AHMA or?
Well, it's funny that you should ask because Rosemary Nisnick.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So she actually sent me an email and she said, I'm on the committee to get speakers for the next AHVMA. Would you apply? And I said, okay. I don't know if I've spoken at vet conferences before, just on TCVM stuff. I said, okay. And I said, what kind of topics do you want? And she's like, well, obviously you're, kind of the food guru, so we should do some stuff on food. But she said, also, you've built this big platform and, maybe talking about how to branch out and be successful and how to actually figure out how to sell your clinics, because I was one of the few people who was successful doing that. So I applied and I gave them like 7 hours of topics. I didn't get picked.
What?
So wait. I don't know. Maybe because I'm not board certified. I don't know what their criteria are.
Well, no, I think that they were going through a major implosion, and now they're on the other side.
This was just like 6 weeks ago, 6-8 weeks ago. So yeah.
What?
Okay, so and it's fine. I mean, it crazy. Not a big deal. But I think
Anyway.
I think there are so many of us, like if more of us had educational platforms where we were educating, like I have a lot of veterinarians who follow me.
Yeah.
If we had more educational platforms that were available, and one of the things that we're working on right now is actually CE credits through our stuff on our Dr. Judy U.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so, and the problem with that, when you're not board certified, you have to have two board certified people write letters saying that you're smarter than a fifth grader and you can actually teach. So,
Wow.
but I do have two people who
That
have
bad.
agreed. So yeah, so hopefully we'll get our CE credits, and that is one of those things. Like, I would love to teach other veterinarians how to do what we're doing, and have more people doing it. And then the other thing that we've done is we've teamed up with some other holistic veterinarians, and other people can put their courses on Dr. Judy U, so that we're, it's just building an educational platform.
I love that.
So, and we're actually doing a horse summit coming up in April, and
Joyce Harmon?
Harmony, Joyce Harmon is
Why did I know?
she's going to do a course, an equine course. She's been talking about doing it for years. She has the whole outline. It's gorgeous.
Oh, good. I can't wait to tell my clients.
She's just never put it together. So she's going to put it together. We're going to put it on Dr. Judy U, because we're horse people, and we've got a lot of followers who are horse people, and we think that they need the same education that we're giving to the small animal people. So
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that you're doing all that. So let's see. I kind of wanted to maybe just end back with the nutrition. I guess, do you have a favorite, just kind of go-to diet that you could share with people? Or is it more complicated than that? I just kind of thought, is there anything we could share with people, just like really kind of tangible, they could get their hands on? It obviously, there's a lot of nuances and they should learn more, and it's
yeah.
a whole educational thing, but
So one of the things that has become very popular, I made it years ago, and it's gone through quite a few changes, is pup loaf. And the pup loaf, we just re-videoed it last week. But there is a pup loaf recipe and video in my books on the website, so it's free. You can just look up pup loaf. If you, frankly, put in your search engine Dr. Judy Morgan pup loaf, it's going to come up. You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see thousands of pictures of pup loaf from around the world, because people literally make this everywhere. And the thing about pup loaf is it's completely balanced using whole foods. There's no supplements or anything with it.
Okay.
But on the website, I have a pancreatitis diet. Soon we'll have the kidney diet. Like we have a handout on Cushing's disease. Some of them are like free downloads that you just have to go through the store and then you can download.
Okay, we'll put those on there. I'll put links to them on this.
So we want things to be available. Certainly if people want to do more, we have a course called Home Prepared Dog Food 101. Originally it was home cooked dog food, and I said, yeah, but we've got a lot of raw feeders. I don't want people to think they have to cook, so it's homemade dog food. Because people are afraid. They're afraid to make food because of
exactly.
It's because they're told they can't do it.
Well, DCM, that whole thing, right? I know you and I know, but maybe we should share with people a little bit about that, because I think there was that is really what's made people afraid, at least in the last couple of years. So the whole deal, backstory on that is in February of 2019, the New York Times ran an article that said, basically, you're killing your dog by feeding him grain-free kibble, or the Pet Food Institute kind of came out with, you're killing your dog if you're not feeding these 4 or 5 diets that your vets sell. And then that basically, and it was an emotional issue, because people were coming home and their 2 or 3 year old dog, they found dead on the floor and was healthy that morning, they thought. So DCM is one of those sneaky, it's called dilated cardiomyopathy for people who don't know. And the Pet Food Institute, the corporations and everything have basically run this messaging. And those of us in the holistic world who I never have had a patient with DCM, and yet I'm working with homemade diets for, almost, well, 27 years. And, it was one of those things where I thought I wrote a chapter in my book about it. But yeah, your take on, because the fear that is really kind of what spurred on the most recent set of fears. And so, you have people who are feeding Proplan that are giving Apoquel to their poor itchy dog, because they're allergic to it. And because the whole is it safer to give them grains? Are you a grain based? Do you believe that every dog needs grains, to be healthy? I mean, I don't, but
No.
I kind of wanted to get can you kind of talk about that for a
Yeah,
second?
so I just saw a infographic yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I think it said 88% of the dogs in that study, the initial thing where they said that it was, grain-free diets were causing a problem, 88% were kibble foods of those dogs.
Right.
So feeding a raw diet that is a meat-based diet or even a gently cooked diet that's a meat-based diet made with human grade foods, you're not going to get DCM because we're giving them the taurine, we're giving them the carnitine, we're giving them what they need. My dogs don't eat grains. I don't, in my book, it basically for every recipe at the bottom, it says, if you want to add a grain to the recipe, this is the one you would add based on the energetics for that particular problem. And some people do and some people don't, particularly people with bigger dogs that they're like, yeah, I got to stretch the budget a little bit. So that's fine. But dogs do not need grains. Dogs need a species appropriate diet, which is high meat. The problem has come in with some of the pet food companies have taken out meat protein and replaced it with legume protein, pea protein, potato proteins. And so you might look at a bag and it says, oh, 28% protein. Good. That's a high protein diet. That's going to be good for my dog's heart. But then if you could actually see the percentages, you might see that, oh, of that 28%, only 50% of it is actually meat protein. So now we've got 14% protein basically is what we're feeding the dog. That's not compatible with good health and longevity. And there is some question about potentially, particularly the legumes, interfering with taurine uptake. We don't have all the answers on that yet. But the bottom line is they don't need grains. The only reason they're saying to give them grains is because the dogs are capable of taking cysteine and methionine and putting them together and making taurine. And by the way, not all of the dogs in the study have low taurine. So it's not even just a taurine problem, but they don't need grains. And I did a consultation for a veterinarian with a Cavalier that was just diagnosed with SM and CM. So she's a veterinarian and she works in a specialty practice. And I said, well, we have to change your dog's diet. And she said, well, okay, I'll do anything, but I'm not going to go grain free because I talked to the cardiologist next door and he's seeing all these DCM cases. And I said, no, you are going to go grain free. But we're going to use not a dry kibble. We are going to use a species appropriate high meat diet, which is what your dog needs. And then we're going to add these other things to, make it more effective for the problem. So by the time I was done with the conversation, she got it and she was like, oh, okay. But
Awesome.
she's practicing next door to a cardiologist, and I have yet to meet a cardiologist who is not buying into this. Which is really hard because when I'm doing all these consultations, and I do a lot of consultations for dogs with mitral valve disease, not dilated cardiomyopathy, and their veterinarians are giving them the same line.
Right.
I have grains in that diet. No, you don't. You don't. My dogs are living to be 18 and 19 years old. They don't get grains. They're fine.
Yeah, same. And that's exactly what I tell people. It's nice to hear you say that too. Yeah, I wrote a whole chapter.
Sorry, it's a soapbox.
No, I'm so happy that you're out there saying. I just can't believe that kind of independently came to the same conclusions just based on experience, you know? So yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to share with people? You know, I mean, you guys have been so generous, and we'll share. I'm gonna go ahead and link a lot of the things that you're on your, like the pop loaf and your website and stuff
Yeah,
like
I've got a ton of articles on DCM too, and it's sort of like I can't believe we're discussing this
that.
again.
I
Like when I'm on
know.
Facebook and I see a new article come out, and I'm like, okay, I can't believe I'm going to discuss this again, but I am.
I know I feel bad bringing it up, but I hear
No, it's fine. It's
yeah,
just because with social media, things go in cycles, so it'll die down a little bit,
mm,
and then all of a sudden, it's right back up there. It's like, oh god, we
yeah,
got to talk about this again.
yeah, I know, and it's such a what I do think is we have more DCM. I honestly think that, so I know this is a strange thing to talk about because it's not nutrition and we don't have much time, but Dr. Paul's research, he's a molecular biologist out of Pullman, and he basically said that high EMF frequencies are affecting calcium channels. And what I have found is that taurine affects calcium channels. So what I've done is, with all my friends that are lethargic and maybe they thought they had a thyroid issue or whatnot, is we're just telling everyone take taurine and see what happens. And it is shocking. People have more energy on it. And it's like, I think it might have something to do with something we're not even studying. That makes me worried, because science isn't supposed to be objective. It's not supposed to be run by corporations that want to own something, right? Science is science, and we should not have a corporate attachment to that. And it's tough when you have big companies like Verizon, CenturyLink, and all those things that they're rolling out all these higher level EMFs with no health research, and that's what upsets me. I think that it's probably going to affect all of our hearts, and maybe it's, like I say, has more to do with the calcium channel itself than the taurine that propels it or that activates it. It's something we all need to talk about for sure.
Yeah.
um, well, thank you so much. Is anything else you want to just, I mean, I just think like people can cook for their animals. People can do
Yeah.
raw food for their animals. They are capable of it.
Yes, they are.
And I just love that.
And they're capable of handling raw meat because we do it every day. Unless you're a vegetarian, you're doing it every day for your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid. The animals love it. They thrive on it. And it's great to hear Dr. Morgan's input as well. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and thank you so much for your generosity. And we'll link to all your wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you.